I'd like to call the meeting to order and thank everyone for their attendance. We got the city manager's briefings today, and we'll get started with the Virginia Department of Social Services Community Partner Day. Dave, you want to do the intro, buddy?
Well, I'm going to turn that over to the Director of Human Services, Danette Smith, and let her do the intro.
Well, Danette, we're glad to have you and whoever you introduce.
Okay, Mayor, thank you so much, and City Council members, thank you so much for having us this afternoon. I am so pleased that the Department of Human Services is able to have a positive presentation today with our state agency, which is the State of Virginia Department of Social Services. Today I have with me Galen Thomas, who's my Deputy Director of Social Services. I have with me Flora Harris, who is our Foster Care and Adoptions Liaison. And I also have a young lady who is new to my team, and I wanted to introduce her because you'll be seeing her come with my leadership team, Andrea Lowe, and she's here as my strategic analyst.
Well, we thank all of y'all for being here. Glad to have you.
So today we are embarking on something that is very exciting that I don't think that we've done in Virginia Beach, and that is we're going to be sponsoring a Community Partners Day, and it's a partnership between the department and the Department of DSS. And the first slide is really just reminding you of our mission, and that is that we want to make sure that we help people live at the highest possible level. We want to do it with dignity and respect. Go to the next slide. The next slide is about our partnership with the state, and I'm going to have Flora come up and talk a little bit about Community Partners Day. Community Partners Day begins tomorrow. We have an excellent reception with community partners from all over the 7 cities, the region. The reception starts at 5:30, and I'm going to let Flora come up and talk about it more in detail.
We are delighted to have you here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As she said, my name is Flora Harris, and we are so excited about tomorrow and Thursday. This started approximately 8 years ago that we created the Eastern Area Committee to Strengthen Families. And that committee was developed based on the VDSS's Engaging Families to Success initiative, where VDSS truly believes it takes the community and all its partners to help families be successful. So they started this initiative. We created Community Partners Day to follow up with that. And over the years, this will be our 8th year, and every year we have increased in vendors and participation consecutively. We've not had a year that our numbers were reduced. And we do this for an opportunity for all our partners to come together. A lot of times you just know people by speaking to them on the phone. You do a lot of work with them, but you never get an opportunity to meet with them. You never get an opportunity to train with them. So this is the opportunity for private agencies, VDSS, to come in and have a chance to learn together, to train together, to develop skills together, and to learn some of the trends that's going on in each organization. And we are so excited tomorrow because the commissioner of VDSS will be here to participate in our Community Partners Day. So what is it? It's an annual event that emphasizes collaboration, training, skill development, and solution-focused strategies while creating an atmosphere of camaraderie. And that's very important, that we develop these skills and everything together. Why is it important? Community engagement. We need to know what every organization is doing in order for us to partner effectively. Promote community partnerships and collaboration. As I said, every year we've increased. Last year we had 29 vendors. This year we have 38 and had to turn some vendors away because we just did not have a space to accommodate the vendor population. We have vendors coming in from Grafton, Virginia, from Henrico, from Poplar Springs, to provide those unique services that we cannot get here locally for our families. So they will be setting up vendor tables on Thursday for the cities, the 23 social services, the private agencies, and families to get an opportunities of those resources that you cannot get here locally. And the goal is just to develop and strengthen partnerships among service providers that focus on the safety, well-being, permanency of our children and families. That is our goal. As many resources, as many opportunities that we can have in the area to increase self-sufficiency and safety for our children. That is the goal of the Eastern Area Committee to Strengthen Families. So our keynote speaker for tomorrow is Miss Smith. And just to give you a quick history on that, she was our luncheon speaker last year, and she so much touched the heart of the subject and the audience that we asked her to come back this year and take the position of the keynote speaker.
Way to go, Danette.
That's
We're
right.
proud of you, young lady.
She actually had people standing up, gave her a standing ovation at the end of the luncheon speech. So we're just very excited. Dr. Sharon Hill, I have not met her personally, but I heard that she's a dynamic presenter. And just to go back to Dennis' speech, are we speed dating our way through child welfare permanency? You know, a lot of times in social services, unfortunately, we work with a crisis-based situation sometimes. So we need to put more resources and support in the preventative end. So are we rushing things, or do we know we need to add more things in the preventive end? So I think her title is absolutely perfect for Thursday. So we're excited about that and definitely looking forward to hearing Ms. Hill. So, okay, one more. So, so at this Community Partners Day, we have two keynote speakers. And as I said, the purpose of this day is to build skills and to network and to provide resources. So we have the day divided down into workshops. And you can go in two of these workshops, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, depending on what topic is of interest to you or what topic your organization may be facing difficulty with. So we have drug uses and its impact on families, establish a medical home for children in foster care. And Dr. Mitchell from King's Daughters is actually presenting this workshop because he wants to work more closely with social services and having a managed form of services for our children in foster care. So he's going to be the speaker for that. Fatherhood Initiative, More Than Just a Man, Brian Hawkins, who has written a fantastic Fathers in Training initiative here in Virginia Beach, will also be providing a workshop. We have the role of community partners to strengthen families. I said we can't do it without each other. We have post-adoption services. A lot of families adopt children, and once the adoption is finalized, the child still experiences some difficulties. The family is still in transition. So it's important that we connect them to those services after the adoption. We have successful reunification. The first goal in child welfare is to return the child home to the family. But we just don't want to return the child home to the family without support and safety. So how do we design a policy and a procedure that will make sure we are doing successful reunification for our children? The misrepresentation of pathology in children examining psychological disorder and psychotropic medication. We found out that a lot of our children in foster care are routinely taking psychotropic drugs. So Dr. Fanning will be presenting on that. How do we look at that? How do we create data on that? What do we need to do from a child welfare perspective to identify the needs of those children? And we all know that human trafficking is just a major issue in this area. And the Justice Initiative here in Virginia Beach will be doing that presentation. And understanding the adoption negotiation process. When our children are adopted in child welfare, as I said, we want to give them support. So in order to give them support, we have an adoption negotiator that sets with the family find out what the family can provide and what we can provide as child welfare. So that workshop will be going on. So you see, we have a very diverse opportunity for workshops on Thursday. And we are really hoping that if you all have some time on Thursday, that you will come in and attend some of our workshops and share some time with us. And we will always make provisions for you to attend if you would like to be there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lauren. Good afternoon. I'm Gail Lynn, and I'm a tie.
Yeah, we welcome you.
Thank you. I'm a tie Community Partners Day with our Child Welfare Division. The primary goals of our Child Welfare Division includes ensuring that children are kept safe, that we're making sure that children's well-being needs are being met, and that we're helping children achieve permanency. Within the last couple of years, our Child Welfare Division has made great improvements in improving the permanency outcomes for children in foster care. we have some really excellent numbers. One is that we have reduced the number of kids that are actually in foster care. Right now, we have 205 kids who are in foster care, compared to almost last year, we had 258. And when I started two and a half years ago, we had close to 300 kids in foster care. So we have drastically decreased the number of kids in foster care, and also overall in the Eastern region. Can you go to the second slide? But another number that I'm really proud of is that we have been able to finalize 78 adoptions in Virginia Beach. That's a lot of kids who have forever homes. And we have also reduced the number of kids that are coming into foster care. Last year, we had 87 kids. This year, we have 49. And the reason why we're able to really achieve permanency for the kids is because our community partners. We have been able to work with our key stakeholders, including, the Eastern region, the state, city departments, schools, families, and relatives. So instead of having kids come into foster care, we're keeping kids safe in their homes and with relatives. So with this in mind, it's very critical that we continue to work with our community partners, and that on Wednesday and Thursday, we're able to network and engage them in terms of keeping kids safe and reaching permanency goals for everyone. So that's all I have.
Well, I think you had some really good stuff there, young lady.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, 78 kids being adopted is
It's
excellent.
amazing.
Fantastic.
I want to applaud that. I mean, it's excellent work. That's
But if
huge
they look in their
progress.
emails, they have kudos from the state that was delivered this afternoon.
We do. We're happy about
the adoption.
Well,
Only 2 localities in the state have these numbers.
Yes.
Wow.
And both from the east.
well, I speak for the council. Thank you, Danette, and your
Thank you.
team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be at the Hilton, out at the oceanfront. So if you get an opportunity, tomorrow evening, the reception is at 5:30, and the conference, it begins at 8 o'clock, and I think I start speaking at 9. So thank you very much,
Thank you,
Mayor
young-
and City Council.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I have a question. The event tomorrow night, because I've been to this event many years through my work, but is this cocktail or reception the night before? This is
Reception.
new, right?
Yeah.
This is not something that's typically done with this Community Partners Day, is
They
it?
usually have.
It depends on the city, that we're in and what resources they have and how they are already connecting with their community partners. We had a reception in Suffolk, we had a reception in Portsmouth, but the other cities we went into were not able to support a reception.
Well, I want to commend you, Flora, for your hard work on this every year. I know a few of my clients in this industry, they look forward to this every year because it's training that their team and their staff can get to better help the clients that they have and the constituents that we have. So thank you for putting this together.
Thank you. And we have over 300 people coming on Thursday. So we're
Thank you.
Wow, that's wonderful.
very excited.
Okay.
Caitlin, Flora, Danette, thanks
Shannon.
very much.
Are you going Thursday morning? Well, get with me after this if you don't mind, please.
Well, it depends.
Thank you. Okay, stormwater quarterly update. Where is short timer Davenport? Oh, that's not a good question. All right. Who's running with this?
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, as required, requested at your mid-year performance eval and as part of the budget process, we have committed to providing you at the final meeting of each of your quarters an update on our stormwater flood control projects. It's certainly not the whole stormwater program, or we would be beginning about lunch to be able to cover that. But we're focused primarily on our flood control project efforts. And Mr. Deputy City Manager Tom Leahy is going to do an intro.
Mayor, members of council, I'm here today with John Fowler. He's the city engineer, also unfortunately a short timer. Tony Alger, the head of our Stormwater Engineering
Just
Center.
heard it.
Why don't you explain
John, you
short
can't
timer?
leave.
Because they are not aware that John has tendered his retirement.
Last week, John indicated his intent to retire at the end of the year. So,
Well, John, I
We're,
tell you, you've done a heck of a job, and we really appreciate it. You've been solid as a rock, and we're very blessed to have had you. Well, thank you, thank you.
between John and Phil, it's about 100 years of knowledge walking out the door. So,
That makes me feel so good.
I say I have Tony Alger, who's the head of our Stormwater Engineering Center, and Mike Mundy, who's one of our senior construction management engineers from engineering, the Public Works Engineering Division.
We welcome you, Tony.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. So as Mr. Hanson just mentioned, we're going to talk about the 10 flood control projects. And now these are the flood control projects that experience major street and property flooding in the last year. I'm going to talk about Aragona drainage improvements, Asheville Park, Central Resort, Eastern Shore Drive, Lake Chubb, Bradford Lake, Sherwood Lakes drainage improvements, stormwater master planning, analysis and inventory, and Windsor Woods, Princess Anne Plaza, and the lakes. And no dashboard would be complete unless I show you some colors. And of course, this is the first quarterly report, so as you would expect, everything's green with the exception of one, and that's the Central Resort District Drainage Improvement Project. And the reason that is red is because that did not receive funding in the CIP program. So these are the 10 flood control projects that I just mentioned, and I want to point out the most important number on this table is the $101 million that council dedicated to these projects. And just to put that into perspective, in the FY17 CIP, the total stormwater program for 28 projects received $136 million. So for 10 projects, $100 million. So the first one I'm going to start out with is Asheville Park. The next two projects, or the next three projects, Asheville Park, Sherwood Lakes, and Windsor Woods, you've all been briefed on those, so I'm going to kind of brush through them kind of quickly, but not too quickly. Asheville Park drainage improvements experienced severe roadway and property flooding last year. This project is only funded for Phase 1. The Phase 1 improvements include a new stormwater pump station, a gate control structure outfall at Flanagan's Lane, 2 additional stormwater ponds, and it also includes the intersection of New Bridge and Sandbridge Road. Those improvements will be a new box culvert and raising the road at that intersection. And while the Phase 1 improvements are being designed, Public Works Operations is pumping down the lakes to elevation 1 in advance of any significant rainfall events. And the estimated project cost for Phase 1 is $8.2 million. So the first quarter activities for this project include pumping down the lakes. Public Works Operations has done this several times this summer. And the significant forecasted rainfall would be something in the realm of 3 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. The preliminary design for Phase 1 is underway, and we're expecting the 30% plans at the end of the year. We created a project webpage for this project. We've met with the developer to discuss a possible cost participation agreement. And this project, I should have mentioned, is actually 3 phases. The first phase is the gated control structure, which is currently under design, and 100% plans are due next month. And we expect that piece of the project to begin construction next year. And then the other 2 phases, we're going to pull the intersection project out, the New Bridge, Sandbridge Road intersection, and do that separately. And then the rest of the project we'll do as a third phase. Continuing with the first quarter activities, we met with Fish and Wildlife on September 7th to discuss the Phase 1 improvements. And we've done 6 presentations on this project since April.
How did the meeting go with Fish and Wildlife?
It actually went very well. We met with Doug Brewer. We went over all the details of the Phase 1 improvements. We discussed with him that we would follow up with him in the end of the year with the 30% design and keep him in the loop on everything that's going on.
Thank you. Let me interrupt you.
No worries. Sherwood Lakes drainage improvements. As you all know, this project also experienced severe roadway and property flooding last year. The improvements for this project, this is also a two-phase project. The first phase is being managed by Public Works Operations, and they are constructing a vault and discharge pipes for a permanent pump station, which Stormwater Engineering is managing the design for. The permanent pump station will include a connection between the two lakes. And while that's being designed, Public Works Operation is pumping down the lakes to keep them maintained between elevation 3 and 3.5 in advance of any significant rainfall. And the estimated project cost for these improvements is $5 million. So the first quarter activities for this project include the completion of the engineering analysis of the two lakes, pumping the lakes down in advance of any significant rainfall and maintaining those between elevation 3 and 3.5. The pump station vault and discharge pipes, that design is 100% complete. We expect to advertise that at the end of the year. And the design for the pump station is underway, and those plans are 30% complete, and we expect to advertise that for construction next summer. Now, in the meantime, we've been meeting with the developer of this neighborhood to discuss possibly participating in the improvements. And we've also created a project webpage for this project. And I was here a few weeks ago briefing you on Windsor Woods, Prince Sam Plaza, and the lakes. As I mentioned then, we're in the process of developing the specific program of flood control measures. The detailed engineering analysis will identify the needed improvements, the cost of the improvements, the phasing and implementation plan of the improvements, and any environmental permitting that's required. And we expect that analysis to be complete by July of next year. And this project, we've been quite busy. I presented this slide a few weeks ago to show you some of the things we've been doing in the first quarter. I will point out that we are working in the neighborhood now. There are 3 dredging projects on this slide: Northgate Ditch, Windsor Woods Canal, and Windsor Oaks West 2 Canal. And then Windsor Oaks West 1 Canal is substantially complete now. They're working on stabilizing the banks, so that'll be complete next month. And for this project, we've had several presentations, with the last one being, Prince Sam Plaza Civic League, which Mike Mundy gave on September 12th. So now to some projects that you might not know as much about. This is the first one is Aragona drainage improvements. This project will address roadway flooding in the Aragona subdivision. This neighborhood, like Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza and the Lakes, was developed in the 1950s, so the storm drainage system, unfortunately, is undersized. This project involves providing additional storm drain inlets and large pipes to provide a more efficient collection system and additional capacity for stormwater. The project is under design at approximately 30% complete, with an estimated project cost of $3.7 million. First quarter activities for this project include modeling the area south of Haygood Road and west of Aragona Boulevard, for those of you who are familiar with that neighborhood. We've added Overman Avenue to the project. We observed some excessive spread at the storm drain inlets, so we've added that to the project. We're at the 30% design plans, and we expect to advertise for construction next summer. Central Resort District drainage improvements. As I mentioned, this is the only flood control project that was not funded in the CIP. It currently has $300,000 appropriated to date, with a balance to complete of over $100 million. So this project the ultimate improvements for this project will include tide gates, pump stations, and an ocean outfall. And one of the interim projects that was identified during the drainage study was to redirect stormwater from the intersection of 21st Street and Baltic to the pump station at 16th Street. This intersection experiences quite a bit of flooding. That project is estimated to cost $15 million. So first quarter activities to date, As I mentioned, the study is complete. We do have an analysis underway to evaluate a potential stormwater management pond at the visitor center. We should have a draft model of that in November. And other than that, we have no other activities scheduled due to funding. Eastern Shore Drive Drainage Phase 1, another large multi-phase project. This project involves tide gates, improvements to the Cape Henry Canal, and 3 new pump stations. A detailed engineering analysis has been developed to identify early implementation projects. And the first quarter activities include the completion of the Cape Henry Ditch sluice gates. These are 3 gates that were installed in the Cape Henry Ditch at a cost of $1.3 million. These are computerized gates that stay closed until the water surface level in the ditch reaches the water level in Long Creek, and then they open to let out that floodwater. As I said, the detailed engineering analysis and 30% plans are complete. The next project underway is the Cape Henry Canal Drainage Improvement Project. This project will deepen and widen the canal between Starfish Road and Beach Street. This is going to provide an improved drainage outfall for the Shore Drive Phase 3 project. That's a roadway project. We expect to begin construction next summer with a cost of $8 million. Chubb Lake, Lake Bradford. This is actually a compilation of 3 projects to address flooding in 3 different areas: Church Point, Hollis Road, and the Chubb Lake, Lake Bradford area. We're just beginning the analysis to determine the improvements needed, but we do know that a large box culvert will be needed at Northampton, Pleasure House Road, and Shore Drive to help the flooding that Church Point experiences. So first quarter activities for this project include advertising for an A&E. We selected RK&K in July. We had the first scoping meeting in August, and we are underway with the first phase, which includes identifying early implementation projects. We expect to have some of these projects identified by early next year. And we've been busy coordinating with the Navy. We're working with the Navy to make sure that the gate is open during major rainfall events. These are the dates since April that we have coordinated with the Navy on the gate that's located close to the old Boone Clinic. And last but not least, the Stormwater Management Master Planning Analysis and Modeling Project. This project is updating the city's 31 sub-watersheds. The last master plan was prepared in the 1980s. We started this project about 18 months ago. This map here, it's hard to see, but it shows the 31 sub-watersheds. The first step to managing a stormwater system is to know what you have and how it performs. So this modeling is going to identify deficiencies in the city's stormwater system, both for quality and quantity, and provide design parameters such as downstream water surface levels to developers for projects. In addition, mapping the city's stormwater system actually meets one of the requirements of our MS4 permit. This model will be interactive and kept up to date as new developments come online. So the next couple slides are the schedule for the completion of this stormwater master planning. We started with the Lynn Haven River watershed, and that will be complete by the end of the year. The Southern Rivers watershed, watersheds 9 and 10 will be complete by the end of the year. And I apologize, you have a typo in your handout, but watersheds 12 through 15 will be complete in February of 19, and I believe your handout says 18. And the rest of watersheds 11, 16, 23 through 28 won't be, at this time, they're not scheduled to be done until April of 2020. Moving to the Little Creek watersheds, we hope to have those complete in the spring of 18 next year. Watershed 29 at the ocean front to be complete by the spring of the following year, 2019. And the Elizabeth River watersheds to be complete in the spring of 18, and the remaining watersheds in July of 2019.
Thank you very much.
what I have.
Jim Wood, please.
I had a couple of comments. First, if you go back to the Eastern Shore Drive Drainage Phase One, the activities, the Cape Henry Ditch sluice gates, they were completed before Matthew, though, weren't they?
No, they were just completed.
Okay, I thought,
You're right, sir. We put 5 J-valve in, but we didn't get the actual 3 sluice gates in until just this summer.
okay. And then, and Dave maybe, or one of y'all knows this answer, there was some sort of inflatable ball that was installed or has been installed and removed at different times to assist with the water backflowing back there. That's just a maintenance issue. That's not part of any capital.
Mr. Wood, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll check with Mark Johnson. That's what they're doing. I don't know if they're using an inflatable block for a certain, I think it was a certain ditch or pipe they were.
They were
inflating
using
that
it for the Cape Henry ditch, and there was part of it.
I believe our sluice gates may have taken over that function.
Maybe, so. And that goes back to something, Mayor, that I was talking about the last time, I think last week or the week before, when we were talking about stormwater management and talking about, actually, I think, John, I mentioned this to you, was the use of temporary barriers and things like that as part of this entire process to save people's homes, and even if it does involve us damming off streets in the middle of huge events that we know are coming. You know, obviously, if it's a giant cloudburst we don't know that shows up, but if it's a nor'easter that we know is coming, or a hurricane or something like that, there, and that's something that I think I mentioned previously. The other thing I'd like to, Mayor, if I could, just for a moment, yesterday I attended the Joint Subcommittee on Recurrent Flooding, of which I'm a member, representing the city in Richmond, and it's run by Delegate Stolley. And I will tell you, there were a number of really good presentations yesterday, probably some of the best presentations that we've had. I will tell you, I think we learned a lot from our neighbors to the west. Norfolk has done an incredible amount of preparation for resilience over the past 5 years or so. So it's gone through, a couple of mayors and city managers and everything, and it's done quite well. They're working on a new zoning rewrite using resilience quotients, which is really impressive. The other thing, frankly, and Bob Mathias, I thought I saw him in here. Bob was also there, and he's getting copies of these presentations that I'm going to share with everybody. But the other one was on mitigation of flooding throughout the area and the reduction in flood insurance premiums. They also shared with us yesterday that Lloyd's has suspended all new flood insurance in Virginia as of last week, and that obviously through the private sector or the private market as opposed to the NFIP, because of the hits they're taking apparently down in Houston. So it's actually very interesting, and I'd like to get that from Bob. But I think there's a lot that we can do. This is certainly a good first step. I mean, Norfolk's looking at a $1.6 billion barrier project that hopefully will save a lot of their stuff. We'll see how it gets funded. Obviously, unfortunately, it takes a major disaster before a lot of this stuff gets funded on the federal level, and perhaps that's a thing that will be positive that comes out of the issues in Houston, is a lot of these things will be funded. But I'm going to share all this stuff with everybody, but I didn't really want to wait.
Sounds good. I really hope, I'd like to get that information.
Comments, yeah, I'll get you all those documents.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Barbara?
I had an earlier briefing, and I appreciate it with staff, and I got a lot of my questions answered about the Princess Anne things. But and I think I've asked this before. We aren't doing any of the central resort district drainage improvements because we don't have any funding. But that's the area where we've got some really major projects planned. I'm assuming that none of them are going to be built on top of something that's going to be a part of a future drainage area that we're going to have to. How are we going to do these things? I mean, is it doing it after all of that area is built up more is okay?
The large share of the work that you are referencing forthcoming is not the flooded areas. The lion's share of the flooding that we've seen, of course, is where our interstate flows into the beach at Baltic and 21st, and these are well-known areas that we've had.
It doesn't take much rain and that thing floods.
And so a lot of us have been out there in knee boots and hip boots, and some of us in flip-flops trying to figure out why. And it all flows, ironically, to the west, to the visitor center. And then it catches the channel that's next to Mocha and goes into Linkhorn Bay via that flow. Everything from about Arctic west gets picked up inside our flood control, our hurricane protection flood control pump system. And so we are doing some analysis. As Tony told you, their drainage area analysis won't be done until 18, sometime in that time frame. Phil Roars briefed you the course of action analysis on the various options that we did. And, all total, it's $100 million because we're talking about a choice between trying to underground connectivity to the pump system that we put in Atlantic, and how much of that drainage area can go that direction, and then the remainder part coming down with enlarged collector systems down 21st, down 22nd Street, where we've had that, tying into where that visitor center is. And we're really looking heavily at removing the visitor center because in today's connected world, most people are using their phones and know where the early bird specials are at the restaurants and what entertainment's going on, and we just don't have the old concept of going to a visitor center, and that seems to be a key location of collection that we're looking at. So it is on our agenda. I've talked to the MLT. We had our first kickoff on our FY19 budget. We understand we've got to look at prioritizing our CIP and expanding our ability to invest in stormwater. So in light of the recent storms across the nation and in Puerto Rico, we are very concerned about how fast we can move and the amount of analysis we can get in our hands to make decisions.
Any other questions or comments?
I had one more comment, and that had to do with, of course, the fact that the southernmost drainage basins are the ones being done last.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. But there was some reason that it may get to be, depending on a different analysis, that it may be moved up, I suppose, but
If we can use a different modeling system, then we can start it next year.
That would be awfully good, because all that area that's so impacted by the wind tides and had so much flooding this year, they really do need some analysis as soon as possible, so.
Any other questions or comments? Y'all got a lot going on over there. I appreciate these updates and also obviously so well organized. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Fort Story Fire Station, Dave Hutchinson, Fire Chief.
Well, while we're swapping out briefing teams, Mayor, members of council, this is an opportunity for us to jointly share the positioning of an engine company at Fort Story, utilizing the facilities that the Navy has at Fort Story. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, members of council. We've got Captain Johnson from Little Creek, Fort Story here joining us. Got his fire chief, and of course you've got the chain of command supporting Chief Hutchison here. We've got a great opportunity to take advantage. There's a timing issue associated with the decision to follow. As you know, we are focused on building a new fire station in Burton Station. And in order to do that, we must man up associated with standing up that. We are about a year late in doing that. We thought the new academy that's going to be announced in the next couple of weeks to commence in November, we thought would have Burton Station's full manning in that academy. Unfortunately, because of things we got to work out with the FAA and the Airport Authority for land swap associated with Tolliver Road construction. We're delayed a cycle of being able to go forward with starting the construction of the Burton Station Fire Station. So we expect that to happen in next year's Academy cycle. So we have an opportunity to jump quickly onto a decision that would man up at Fort Story. And if it seems reasonable to the council, Chief Hutchinson and his team that are selecting the next academy would be able to move and be able to field that staffing if you feel it's reasonable that we should take what Chief Dave Hutchinson is going to brief you now. So, Chief?
All right. Thank you, sir.
We're glad to have you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. As you can see, we started off with the partnership is really what we believe in. You know that very well, sir, from past, but the Navy Regional Fire Department and then the Navy itself, we've had a long history of working together, and we're just very thankful for that. Next, we would move into the fire station. As you know, we've been looking for a piece of property or having something on the north end to help protect that end of the city for a long time. It goes all the way back to 2001 is when we identified during a study that we actually needed a fire station at the north end and we needed one at Burton Station. There was a couple of other places, but those two were on the top of the list, and just so happens that we're moving forward with that now. So that's a very good positive. It is one of the last locations now that we're working with, and we're working with Fort Story and the Public Works the section of the Navy, so that we can move forward with this. Being clear though, and representing the Navy and being there, we have to move first. We have to say that we want to do this, and then they'll start to move forward with the process of allowing us to move into the station. We already have mutual aid agreements as far as all our runs and the way we respond with them on the base and off the base, but it'd be a little different with us actually living on the facility full time. We have shared a facility on 2 occasions before with the Navy when we remodeled Company 4, and then a long time ago when we had moved another station out. We had done that twice. So it has been done, but not for a permanent level. This slide here shows very clearly, if you see where the white area is, that would be the first due area of the new engine, which we would call engine 23. Would come down here to the south, and that's just so you have a street reference. We're talking from like 80th Street to 40th Street is the area of what we're saying would be there, what we would call our first due. Okay.
Can you show on the map where the station is on Fort Story?
I can give you an approximate, sir. I think it's, yep, they've advanced right there. It was, I think we did it, it was like 1.3 miles. It's a 3-mile bend, right? Yep, and so it's right down almost in the middle is a good place to put it. And where that comes in, Mr. Wood, is that what I was going to say is when we start to go west, this area here, although this is their second due, it's another very high density area for us to cover. And to get to this station, we're coming from the hospital, from Bain Drive, Company 8. So it's a long response time. Although it won't be their first due, it would be their second due. So for any of our large fires, when we have them in these 2 areas, as you'll see in a minute, the fires are, can be rather large due to the wind and the size of the structures. Okay. This slide is the one that shows very clearly how many calls we had in 2016 into the 2 areas that I was just talking about. It represents almost 600 calls, so you can see there's a need there. To give you a reference, this would run more calls than your Blackwater or your Creed's fire station in a year, to give you about a reference of what we're talking about. Yes, ma'am. It wouldn't be maybe our busiest station, but it's not going to be at the slowest either. It's going to be about in the bottom third, but it's still, you have Blackwater and Creed's that run less. This one is the one that I said, you know, the picture's worth 1,000 words. The mayor was there with us that day on 72nd Street, I believe, sir.
Yeah, I live there.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of things I want to point out to you here that shows in this picture. There's no wind that day. It's hard to believe in our city that down at the oceanfront there's no wind, but there's not. We still had to put exposure lines onto this side over here, which we would call the D side of the structure. We had to put exposure lines there because the fire was going to light it off as well. If we had had wind out of the north, we would have been fighting fire over here as well. So it's just something to think about when we get down here. The size of these structures, the wind blowing.
So you're telling me this guy wouldn't be standing there on the
No.
north wind?
No way.
Had a hose, a
Yeah.
regular hose that he
Yeah.
was putting on his house.
Yeah.
Exposure line.
It's one of our, we'll take an attack line, the 1 3/4 line, and instead of fighting the fire that's burning, we have to start applying water and stuff onto the other structure to keep it from lighting off. Yeah, it happens. So this was in July of 2015. One of the things is down here is as you can see, and as y'all know better than me, that these structures are expensive. This was about a $1.2 million loss after this fire. To give Fort Story all the credit here they deserve, they got there in under 4 minutes. That was fantastic, right? But when you show up with 4 people to a fire of this magnitude, we're behind the 8 ball. Chief Cover used to say all the time, we're playing catch up, and it's just very hard. What we're proposing is if you can show up with that second engine, which increases your response force to 8, is one truck would have stopped at the hydrant, laid the supply line, gone to the foot of this fire. The other one would have hooked up. So instead of having 500 gallons of water in this one truck, you'd had an endless supply so that we could take what we call a deck gun, turn this thing around and hit that with high volume water. Instead, they had to pull hand lines to try to start fighting it because they couldn't take the chance to run out of water. That's part of the problem. So it's a big key here as far as how that goes. We did very well getting on scene that day. Just so you know, we did the best that could happen that day did. The fellows from 11 were coming off a call at 19th Street, so they got there just 2 minutes later. So you can see that what matters here for us on these type of calls, minutes can really make a difference. So you can move on, Vance. So the scope of it is we want to staff and deploy a VBFD engine out of the Fort Story fire station. We believe it'll help us reduce the response times, improve firefighting capability, and improve reliability. Reliability is when we're in the building or not in the building, in our first due area, can we get to your house in a timely manner? When we get a second call, that's another thing that we've got to say here is that, I mean it when I say it, we have such a great working relationship, but they have a base to protect as well, right? They have their own city that they're protecting. So if they're on that call on the base, they can't come off to help us. So we have to be able to do that on our own. And that's part of what we're talking about here with the reliability. The other part is, and I'm sure some of you know, is the improved insurance service office rating. I can't say that 3 times fast. Is it will help lower the rates for the north end. As some of y'all know, the ISO rating in the rest of the city, we're very proud. We just had it recalculated, and we went from a 5 uptown to a 2, right? And in the county, we went from a 10 to a 5, apologize, to a 5. Well, the north end here is still at a 10. This section is at a 10 because we can't get the full emergency response force there in time. With the addition of this engine, it drops it automatically to a 2. So the residents in the north end would see a for sure reduction in their insurance.
Probably can't vote on it now.
He's going to get vote on it now.
I hope I helped you, sir. I'm not sure there.
You scared him.
Obviously, some of the benefits, working with Fort Story, again, like I said, that's amazing. We talk about the price of a fire station is expensive, and I don't have to tell you all of what it would cost on the north end. We ask for just a rough guesstimate. For the 2 acres that we would need on the west side of the of Atlantic is like $6 million, and on the water side would have been $15 million. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get that. You don't give me 2 acres, sir?
If
No,
you
I didn't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. Oceanfront, fire station, yeah.
Chief Cover and I'd be fighting who gets in there first. Anyway, it helps with a number of issues. One thing I haven't talked about a lot here is that when you get down to the bottom, the survivability profile, it is really serious business. You know, the minutes that we can get there make a difference, whether it's a fire. One thing I didn't talk about is that we're training all our waterfront stations to be rescue swimmers. We've had a couple of really good saves at Sandbridge and other areas. We will have rescue swimmers in this station. We've already been working with the base as far as their stations to get their guys trained up. Again, that collaboration and having us as rescue swimmers on the north end, that's big. That's really big. That to me is probably the highest potential of saving lives right there. Not to mention faster on our EMS calls as well as the fire calls.
Explain to me how we can do this. You know, this is something to me is an absolute no-brainer, something that this area has been without for as long as I can remember. But let's talk about, can you run your apparatus on an EMS call that's a life-threatening call from there, you know, first, you know, as a standard procedure? Because as you just said, you know, even if you're responding from the station, it's a good little hike down there. And for a heart attack call or something along those lines, I would like to see that thing run from 4th story.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know as well as I do, sir, is that we're trying to get to any call in under 6 minutes. We're shooting for 4 minutes. So it's going to help exponentially.
So that would be automatically done? I mean.
Yeah, we feel very, yes, sir.
It would have its own response area,
Yeah.
just like Station 11, the oceanfront station does. And if the call came on 72nd Street, that fire engine from 4th story would respond there first. It would primarily to the response of the city.
Even if we had an ambulance that was responded,
Yes, sir.
we'd still
yeah.
get it? Okay, good.
Well, and that's the other thing that we've talked about with Chief Snyder and with the union partners is that if there's a call on base or off base, we're going to respond as normal. Whether if it's on the base, we're responding in with them, second due, and if it's off, and if it's a medical call and you have something, a heart attack or whatever it is, a drowning, we're going to respond together and work like that as just as we would outside in the city.
That would be huge.
Oh, yes, sir.
Be great.
Yeah, no question. So the timeline, again, this is our timeline that we're starting. Obviously, we will be working under the Navy's. It's like going to visit somebody at their house. You know what I mean? We would work under their timeline, but what we would shoot for, obviously, is to hire 15 firefighters in November, staff the station in roughly May. And if we weren't quite ready, then we could definitely disperse them out throughout the city until it became available to move in. And then we'd have to promote 3 captains along the way. We were very careful. Vance is very conservative when it comes to the dollars. So we made sure that we calculated everything that we could possibly think of so that we wouldn't have to come back to you for any more money. So we believe truly that this is probably high in the dollar amount that we would need, but we didn't want to leave anything out as far as what we could possibly think of. So for salaries is obviously the highest, $620,000. Uniforms and PPE is just under $100,000. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment is $62,000. Station alerting is $100,000. Phones, desk radios, $21,000 for a grand total of just over $900,000. The furniture and fixture and stuff, we just didn't feel like, obviously, if we're going into the bases structure, anything that has to be done or that we would pay for. So we didn't want to ask them for anything. We don't think we're going to have to buy a new desk necessarily or phones or stuff like that, but we just wanted to make sure we gave everything we could so that y'all had as high a dollar amount as we could think it would be. The manager.
Yeah, this is what they do. They figure it out, and then they give me the bill, and then I gotta talk to you about how we might fund this. Right now, Patty's end of year 2017 looks to be plus 10, somewhere close to 10.4% fund balance, which is a good, healthy amount. there will be some fund balance there. You all, of course, have to prioritize how we spend our money. This is a critical function. I think it's got great merit. But a $900,000 cost in the year execution's pretty serious bogey that we got to fill. I would recommend that you give me some kind of indication that I would be safe in putting a reservation against that as she comes forward with her year-end projections, and we would decrement that so that you'd have an opportunity to look at.
Does anyone object with that,
No,
to
it's
that
a no-brainer.
recommendation? Okay, I've seen that, good. What kind of commitment, I mean, because of this investment, is the Navy, I mean, is the contract, I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of agreement put together
Yes, sir.
that we could be there for X number of years.
Yes, sir, that'll be worked out. I don't want to speak for it because it was very clear when we were given this opportunity was we had to get agreement first and then move forward, but that would be one of the first things that we would work through.
Right, Jim?
So how big is the station? I mean, there's room for us to,
Oh, yes, sir.
to staff
Yes, sir,
additional people?
there's 10 bunk rooms. It used to, it used to have 2 engines and an engine, a quint, and an ambulance there, right? And it was like 10 bunk rooms, a large kitchen. We've been through it. Large kitchen, plenty of office space. They have what's called a it was like small EOC room that's got some use. As you can see, it's 4 bays. It's plenty big to house what would be equivalent of eight people.
Nice, nice looking.
So there's plenty of room for us.
Yes, sir.
And there's no concern that they're going to expand and that they might need to expand and
Well, I don't want to say that, we've not talked about that, but that's not in the purview as of what I know. I certainly don't want to speak for them.
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think the
Yeah.
devil's in the details. I just think about the whole
Yeah.
communication stuff and all that of working on the base and
Well,
access, I guess. But I guess once you're on, you're on. But
yes, sir, I would agree.
Barbara?
Just so I'm clear.
Yes,
This would be
ma'am.
like having 2 different fire departments in the same building.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
They're still gonna be independent, they're covering the base, that's their first thing.
Yep.
And then our guys will be there
Yes,
totally
ma'am.
separate and
Right.
get along great.
And we would still run call, like right now, like that fire, Navy Regional 18 showed up first. So that's never a problem. This issue is not a problem about any way, shape, or form. We do it every day, all day, of running together. It's just, we're gonna now be cohabitating. That would be the bigger picture. And as you know, that could be more of a problem. Yes, ma'am. That's where it all, yeah.
A little bit better.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
do a lot of that in the fire department.
That'd be the Proby, right?
That's right, the Proby.
All right, any other questions or comments? We're very excited about this opportunity. The sooner it's done, the better, in my opinion.
Yep. If I could,
Yeah, thanks for the partnership.
yep.
Thank you.
Yep, if I could steal just 10 seconds more without getting in trouble, is y'all's FEMA team, Virginia Task Force 2, has been deployed almost the entire month of September. We have been to Texas and done a wonderful job, and we've been to Puerto Rico twice. Just a couple of quick stats. They've visited 1,000, I mean, it's like they've done physical searches of thousands of structures. They airlifted, they assisted over 100 in legitimate airlifted rescues and brought people out of high water. Not just that they were moving them, but that they were in water over 10 times. So it's you can be very proud of what they've. I'm very proud of it. Y'all
all
can be
are.
very proud of them as well.
Well, you
We've
let them know
answered
we're
the
all very
call,
proud.
and we're definitely one of the go-to teams in the country.
And they returned.
They returned last night at 12:30. I think we were at the airport. Yeah.
Everybody? Or
No, ma'am. I was going to say that I want to leave out. We have the incident support team, the overhead team. We still have 4 or 5 members that are down in Puerto Rico, and we have 1 member of the Hampton Roads incident management team is in Texas, helping. Florida. I apologize. We've been in Texas, Florida. He's in Florida helping there, and he'll be back October 5th. 5th, yeah. So they're all starting to transition back, but we still have 5 or 6 people that are out, and they're in the overhead teams.
a key here is the experience that they're gaining there, and they're bringing that back to our city.
Yeah.
God forbid, should we ever need it, that's very, very important.
Absolutely.
It definitely, it pays dividends.
Help myself, Chief, sorry.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
You know, Mr. Covey, you're not in uniform.
I may not be either after that comment, but. Yeah, all right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you
I'm
guys
glad
making the
the new
trip.
chief got something done at the north end.
Your house was.
Thanks, Mercedes. Appreciate you bringing the game.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
All right, the Oceanfront Camera Program.
Yes, sir. We're swapping out briefing teams. Chief Severa is coming in to give you an update, and we got another issue here that we got to deal with. We've had this project on the books for several years. We've run into a financial requirement to request assistance from the city council to help us get over the hump. And Chief Cover's here, or correction, Chief Severa's here to explain what the issues are, and then I'll follow up with the financial issue at the end.
Chief, we're glad to have you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Stiles, thank you for having us here. We're going to talk about where we are in a timeline for the Oceanfront Camera Project and where we need to go from this point forward. We'll start with a little bit of our historical timeline. You approved funding for this project back in July of 2014, and we originally anticipated 3 phases would be in this project. We anticipated that the project would start. We had an engineering firm, and we anticipated that we would just move forward with this particular firm. At this point, I'd like to introduce Lily Beachy from ComIT and Mark Johnson from Public Works Engineering. They will assist because they are subject matter. Well, Ms. Beachy is the project manager, and Mr. Johnson, he's our subject matter expert when we get to the engineering end of this, and it would be better for him to speak to that than me.
We're glad to have you all.
Currently, Highway Electric has chosen to complete the work, and I will get into the reasons why we now have a secondary engineering firm. We hired an engineering consultant in September of 2014, and it was not a good working relationship. It was actually, from my humble estimation, disastrous. We had ongoing problems with the consultant. We threatened litigation at a certain point. It was nothing but continual delays in getting work orders done. It was delays in getting information back from them. The continual delays went up until including April of 2017. We finally got a construction document, the final construction document from them in April of this year. And that's only after we threatened litigation on the matter.
When was it due, Jim, originally?
Mr. Councilman, I don't have that exact date.
Roughly.
January?
Okay.
January.
So it was like 6 months over.
Right. It was before we went to this summer, spring break this summer.
Okay.
Originally, we anticipated 25 cameras would be installed. We had budgeted funds for Phase 1, and they were supposed to start our Phase 1 in 2014. What we had to do was break out our Phase 1 into 2 separate work orders because we had not only some delays, but we had some extra increases in cost. Ms. Beachy will get to that, why we had the large increase in cost. We'll get to that in a moment. But Phase 1 was separated into 2 work orders. We prioritized the cameras that we need, and those cameras will be east of Pacific Avenue. That's the Boardwalk and Atlantic Avenue. That's the first section of Phase 1, if you will. The second section of Phase 1 will be for cameras west of Pacific Avenue. You've seen this on a number of occasions. I just wanted to go over where we have our cameras placed. We feel that we will have a lot of coverage on the Boardwalk and Atlantic Avenue, but you will see that there are a couple of cameras at 17th in Arctic, 17th in Cypress, 17th in Washington. That's to bring the cameras all the way up to the second precinct. Otherwise, we will not be able to bring that fiber all the way up unless we have those in place going up to the second precinct. So we're kind of jumping ahead to have those cameras in place so they could tie in with the Atlantic and Boardwalk cameras. For our second work order, we're going to go west of Pacific Avenue, or Pacific Avenue West, if you will, and all the different areas that we will have, and we will go as far back as General Booth Boulevard and Bird Neck Road. Now we're going to get into why we have the deficit. Ms. Beachy will come up and explain in much greater detail where we are on this issue.
Thank you, Chief. And we welcome you.
Thank you. As Chief Severa had mentioned, Phase 1 was separated into 2 work orders once we learned that there was a deficit in the project. And that deficit is $800,000. And that's what's needed for Work Order 2 and the completion of the current phase, which is Phase 1. So here's how we calculated the deficit of $800K. The work order from the construction company came in at $522,000. Extra test pits are included and required beyond the 20 that were estimated originally by the engineering consultant. We added 15% contingency. Typically, that's what we use on our projects. This line item is sometimes called a reserve, and it's basically a percentage of the budget for set aside for unexpected or known risks. So it totaled up to 791, and we rounded it up to 800K. Once Work Order 1 is completed, there's no funding remaining for Work Order 2. Upfront, unplanned expenses and inaccurate estimates were contributing to all funds that will be utilized after the completion of Work Order 1. This slide addresses the factors contributing to the deficit. The largest contributing factor to the deficit are these extra test pits that are included and required, as I had mentioned, beyond the 20 that was originally estimated by the engineering consultants. In addition, purchases were made when all 3 phases were funded and were available. Extra camera licenses were purchased beyond the 25 that were required for Phase 1. We purchased the camera licenses for Phase 2 and Phase 3, as well as for the 80 traffic cameras, so that all of the cameras could use the same software for viewing. We also upgraded the second precinct camera room. We bought, so that it could be a command central, if you will. We bought hardware, included workstations, wall displays, monitors, software, and there were also modifications to the room as well as some of the furniture needed. We did have some unplanned expenses and overtures. First item is the Cox fiber audit, which is now required for our project. This was a recent inclusion into the project. IT has piggybacked on the school's contract to have Cox Telecommunication Virginia Incorporated provide us with fiber and infrastructure support, verification, maintenance, and troubleshooting. So now we've got one point of contact company to do that for us. We also bought additional cameras and peripherals, additional installation camera equipment, Cisco switches, loggers, as well as spare cameras. There were overages in the poles and the camera cabinets, but that's because we added a few more spares to the pot. So the biggest takeaway from here are these test pits that really made up quite a bit and the largest contributing factor to the deficit.
Thank you.
Now, I know on your mind is you want to know what a test pit is and what the test pits are designed to do, so Mark Johnson will now take us through the engineering phase of this, and then we'll finish up with where we need to go from here. Mark?
Very good. Mark, glad to have you.
Okay. Quickly, we're required to do test pits under the Underground Utility Damage Prevention Act the state has. The resort area is a very dense underground utility area. What we did with the project, we knew we were going to have to do test pits, which is basically dig a hole over top a known private or public utility and confirm the vertical elevation and the horizontal elevation so you can install, in this case, the pole foundations, which are usually 36 inches in diameter and go about 15 to 18 feet in the ground. Okay. We set up the contract such that we would have the contractor do the test pits so that we could adjust in the field the location of the pole foundations as opposed to starting to relocate all these underground utilities. And what we did towards the end, when we actually got out in the field with the contract documents, we started looking at the existing underground utilities, and we started to identify more utility potential conflicts with the conduits and the pole foundations than we originally expected. So that's how the numbers started to grow towards the end of the design of the project. Moving forward.
Thank you.
We began construction after Labor Day. We realized there's a moratorium during the summer for work, especially on the boardwalk and Atlantic Avenue at the oceanfront. Work on cameras east of Pacific Avenue to the boardwalk has already begun, and we're projecting to be completed by January 20th of 2018. Work on the cameras west of Pacific Avenue will begin immediately after this is completed and is projected to be completed by the mid to end of April 2018. Deputy City Manager Cover was able to work with Management Services and was able to come up with a funding stream of $400,000 from the Public Safety Equipment Replacement Project and $400,000 from a previously completed Princess Anne Road Phase 4 project. If we take those two funding streams together, that's the $800,000 that we will need to complete Phase 1 of the project.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Yes, ma'am.
So this is you're asking us for if this is okay to go forward.
Back up one chart.
Yes, that's what we...
What I'm asking you is to understand the importance of the oceanfront camera system improvement that we have. We've had cameras down at the oceanfront for quite some time. The level of fidelity there is you really can't you can't zoom in, you can't get facial features, you can't apply modern software for being able to input data and then search the public for a suspect or a lost child or any other type of modern software application that these kind of interfaces now provide. The cameras that we have put in place that are the new high definition are amazing with regards to being able to improve public safety response, to being able to monitor from the control room in the 2nd precinct, to be able to give direction to responding officers, to scan the circumference that an officer on the ground or on a bike or emerging from a car or a responding vehicle would not have the peripheral ability to see the safety concern. We are incorporating drones. We've used that now beginning this year extensively. The connectivity of their fidelity and their cameras integrated into this camera system has changed the dynamics of policing at the oceanfront. We are wanting to put these on the boardwalk. That's the first phase that we briefed what's happening. As Lily said, we're getting those between the hotels and the boardwalk, and there's less intense utilities underground there, and not having a lot of difficulty getting those on the ground. But when you get on the street, as Mark talked about, we have a very intense utility underground issue. carefully discussing the contractor that we took on. We actually took on an existing provider that was connected to our intelligent transportation system. This was the AE that was providing information to our Public Works engineering that works for Mark. This contractor was working with our ability to install new ITS cameras at our various intersections. We thought that he would have the capability to continue delivering services regarding this project. What we found out is this is a much more complex, much more involved scenario than he was dealing with on traffic control, and he was over his head. And we languished mightily, and when you languish mightily in a contract, there are certain procedures you take towards non-performance. And so we've had to wrestle our way through that, and now that we're back on track, we know that he underestimated what the requirements are. We really believe it's essential that we get this camera system in. We're a year out of date. We should have had it by spring break this year.
There, I'll be honest with you.
We only have,
I wasn't aware of it.
we only had a handful of cameras in place to help us throughout
idea.
the spring break and the summer, and we're heads down with Highway Electrics prepared to do it. But as Mark told you, we got a law that says you got to go in there and dig. You can't let them go in there and disrupt existing cable, existing utilities, and test pits are just a real pain in the butt that you got to deal with to do that. So,
Got a question?
Okay, so this is a decision brief. This one and the previous one.
no, this is an information brief that with some kind of head nod here, we would like to be able to bring to you at next week's formal meeting a request for reappropriations from these two fund sources behind me in an ordinance for a decision.
Any other questions or comments? I just reiterate, I thought it was already done. A district councilman, it makes me feel a little bit better knowing that he's thought the same thing. We got to get it done.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One
Yes, sir.
final comment, Mr. Mayor, will you indulge me for a second?
Sure.
Fire Chief Hutchinson was up previously, and he mentioned Task Force 2. I just want you to know that the pride that we have in Task Force 2, knowing that it comes out of Virginia Beach, knowing that our senior leadership designed that whole task force, and they implement on missions internationally now, is absolutely fantastic. So from another public safety sector, we are extremely proud of what everyone does on Virginia Task Force 2, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Thank you, sir. Thank you all very much. Okay, planning items pending. Bless you.
Bless you.
Okay, who's up first? Oh, not you,
No,
Barry.
not me.
You're not
Other
used to
people
that.
are up, but I want to make a public service announcement. I just want to make sure that you all got your ITA plan in your council
Right here in
packet
my
on
hand.
Friday. Good, you got it in your hand, and you've read it all, because we're going to quiz you on it later. But that there is a public meeting. Dr. Stephen White and a cast of a few are going to host that tomorrow night across the street. So if your calendar is not full, I want to make sure that invitation is out there for you. You can see you got your plan. with you. All right, Carolyn's up.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have Jimmy McNamara with me today. So after I give you a quick summary of the items that we have scheduled for you on October 3rd, Jimmy will give you a quick review of the planning items scheduled for October 17th. Both of the planning items on October 3rd are within the Princess Anne District. The Planning Commission actually recommended denial for item number 1, which is really a twofold request. It's a,
Well, that's being withdrawn from what I've just been,
yes.
correct?
Yes.
All right, so we don't need to do that. It's
I'm
withdrawn.
sorry?
It's withdrawn, right?
Yes, it is being requested to be withdrawn, but they still have a request for a conditional use permit for a religious use on that property.
I didn't read it that way.
So the rezoning portion from Ag 2 to B2 is withdrawn, but the conditional use permit for the church is still on.
Yes, and I called Eddie Bourdon, the applicant's attorney, to clarify that.
Okay, I'm glad, because you're clarifying it for me. I didn't read it that way.
It was all withdrawn.
So this site exists today as a 20-acre farm, and the property is located in the 70 to 75 noise zone.
What he's anticipating.
So new residential is not an option on this property based on our ACUS requirements. However, the church is a compatible use under our ACUS ordinance. The plan depicts a 31,000 square foot church with 600 seats in the sanctuary, as well as a 335 space parking lot. As recommended by the Planning Commission, the comprehensive plan, the applicant did submit a preliminary stormwater management strategy, and our engineers have reviewed that. And they are confident that the strategy does have the potential to conform to our stormwater requirements. Staff did receive many letters and emails of opposition to the rezoning, and we did have 11 speakers at the Planning Commission meeting who were in opposition to, specifically to the rezoning. The Planning Commission voted to deny the request, really boiling it down to the principal concern about land use compatibility with the proposed commercial with the surrounding residential uses. So no specific concerns were raised about the conditional use permit for the church, and as I mentioned, the rezoning has been withdrawn. That rezoning application has been withdrawn.
Got a question, please?
Carolyn, are you all able to notify the people who spoke in opposition to the rezoning that it's being
Yes,
withdrawn?
we have notified all of the folks that we do have the contact information on, and it's going out in a couple different avenues, yes.
And also, Mark, if you could follow up, I gave a letter to Elizabeth, seeing if there was a way the Navy could help with that remaining parcel, the Navy or our BRAC funding with it. I'd appreciate that your convenience and update intimately too.
And I think if there is an opportunity to do something more than even this part may be deferred, but that will depend on, so just to let everybody know, it's still being worked on, but at least the application for the commercial is gone.
Yes, sir.
What is the application for the commercial part? What is that?
So if you could go back to that, so it's about 6 acres along London Bridge Road.
Right.
That was requested to be rezoned to B2 Community Business District.
That was not going to be the church, it was going to be other users.
Correct. The church was proposed to be on about 14 acres that remained.
That's where the opposition came from.
All right, well, that's where I got confused, because I thought it was the church was withdrawing, okay.
So it's just going to be a church.
Correct.
Makes sense.
So your next item on the 3rd was deferred by City Council at your August 15th public hearing. So you have been briefed on this, so I'll real quickly go through it. This is also a twofold request. It's a rezoning of about 5.5 acres from agriculture to conditional PDH2, and it's also a modification to the existing 2011 proffer agreement. Phase 1 of the enclave at Princess Anne neighborhood exists with 34 single-family lots, and this rezoning request will add about 5.5 acres to the enclave with another 17 single-family dwelling lots. This rezoning is in the less than 65 noise zone, which is the lowest noise zone, and it's also outside of the ITA. So since the deferral on August 15th, the applicant has added proffer number 8, which is really providing additional pedestrian and bicycle connectivity within the Nimmo Parkway right-of-way. The applicant is proffering to construct a 1,000-foot-long multi-purpose trail within the right-of-way from the existing cul-de-sac, which is Rod Procesci Way, heading east towards the entrance of the Veterans Care Center, which is on that adjacent property. No other changes to the plan since August are included. Vehicular ingress and egress will continue to be off North Landing until Nimmo Parkway is extended. The lot sizes and the new home designs as well as the exterior building materials for Phase 2 will mimic those of Phase 1. The open space remains the same at about 42% with the addition of a tot lot from the Planning Commission's deferral. And this new development does pass the stormwater management test, subject to several modifications that our engineers have notified the applicant about.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Well, when it was deferred, I was really hoping we were going to be able to work something out that we could do maybe some cost participation with the developer to improve Nemo Parkway to the entrance here, which is where their ultimate road will come, but that just didn't happen. I'm still very much concerned about having all this entrance fee on North Landing Road, which is why I voted against Phase 1 when Phase 1 was approved, and this only compounds the things that I found were not acceptable with Phase 1, so I will not be supporting this.
We'll move on. Jimmy?
Okay.
We welcome you, sir. Thank you, Carolyn.
So on your October 17th meeting, we have 10 items for your consideration, with the lion's share of these being within the Rose Hall district.
Go, Shannon.
I said, get ready, buckle up. All 10 of the projects are recommended for approval by staff, and 9 of the 10 by the Planning Commission. The lone recommendation for denial comes on item number 4, which is a conditional use permit for home occupation retail sales for firearms. And we'll be going over that much more detail here shortly. So item number 1 is a request for a conditional use permit for a tattoo parlor within a 1,500 square foot unit located within an existing shopping center at Independence and Constitution. Specifically, the proposal is to offer microblading, which is the application of permanent makeup, and the zoning ordinance classifies this as tattooing, so a conditional use permit will be required. There are no changes proposed to the exterior of the building, including the signage, nor to the site layout, and staff is not aware of any opposition to this request. The next is this subject site consists of 7 acres and 4 parcels. The property is developed with 2 new car dealerships and 1 used car dealership. The applicant requests a modification in order to remodel and to expand the existing Hyundai sales and service building on the western parcel. Part of the renovations will include a car wash, and as such, a conditional use permit for a car wash is requested.
I don't think that's Rose Hall.
I don't either.
I think that's Lynn Haven.
We can look into that to ensure.
Is that on the Windsor Woods side of the boulevard or the other side?
Let's see. It's just south of the boulevard.
On the south side.
Yeah, that's not
Lynn
Rose Hall.
Okay. Well, we'll make that correction and get that in. So Lynn Haven district here. So the plan depicts a proposed expansion that includes 8,400 square foot showroom and 1,700 square foot service area and a car wash facility, which will not be open to the general public. It will basically service vehicles on the site. The parcels will be reconfigured as depicted by the yellow property line that's shown on the screen. The building is designed with finishes that will complement the surrounding area, and the 35 parking spaces that are depicted on the site layout are sufficient to address the minimum parking requirements for this site. This is a request on a 27.5 acre site that has a conditional use permit for religious use that was approved in 2003. The master plan was conditioned with this approval. The applicant is proposing an 8,100 square foot artificial turf field and 2,400 square foot picnic shelter to be added to the rear of the site. As this differs from what was conditioned with the master plan, a modification is required. There will be no outdoor lighting that's associated with this request, and the hours of operation will be from 8 to 10, so there won't be anything on the field or in the picnic shelters after those times. Staff is not aware of any opposition to this request. The next request is a conditional use permit for home occupation for retail sales for firearms. The applicant is in the process of obtaining their federal firearms license. Consequently, he is requesting a conditional use permit for their single-family dwelling in order to fulfill the requirement that the ATF, that they must have a business premises that customers can visit. Business will be conducted on a referral basis on the internet and by word of mouth. No sign advertising the business is proposed. Staff has recommended a condition that no more than 5 hand-to-hand transfers per month be permitted. Opposition was present at the Planning Commission public hearing and stated concerns related to both security and traffic impacts. Prior to the Planning Commission public hearing, the Planning Commission visited the site and cited security concerns with the presence of gun safes within the attached garage. The Planning Commission voted 10-0 to recommend denial of this application.
Yes, please.
Mark, is that anything that is, I mean, I know we've gone over this.
You will have to, a vote to deny will have to be based exclusively on documented planning and zoning concerns. Otherwise, you run the risk of running afoul of the Virginia code provision, which prohibits a local governing body from restricting any activity associated with the possession or sale of firearms.
Has the planning commission been instructed in this part of?
I believe that the planning commission received the same informational briefing that was provided to the council by my office. And Kay is nodding affirmatively to that statement.
Staff recommendation?
The staff recommendation was approval, which I think will create a factual issue that's hard to overcome.
Well, we look forward to this one.
When you get a chance, can I get the verbatim of that?
Absolutely, we can provide that.
Good luck, Jim.
All right, next request. In April of 2017, the City Council approved a modification of a conditional use permit for an expansion to a beauty school within 2 units as shown on the screen. The applicant requests to rezone the property to conditional B2 to enable the additional uses on the site, specifically a tattoo parlor and body piercing establishment. The school proposes to offer courses in microblading. Based on this, conditional use permit is requested. It is anticipated that up to 2 employees will be on site. Typical business hours will be between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's Monday through Friday. No changes are proposed to the exterior of the building. The Planning Commission did add a 4th condition that limits the type of tattooing performed on the site to microblading and limits the advertising of tattoo services outside of the building.
Can you get me a list of all the tattoo parlors in the city and where they're located? I mean, it just seems that like I know, right? Every week I'm getting a storage facility, a tattoo parlor, or a daycare center. I'm just curious to how many tattoo parlors there really are throughout the city.
Maybe.
But also, that I think I have to have a clarification that because some of that permanent makeup
Right.
is different than the tattoo, but it's still referred to tattoo, correct?
This is microblading,
That's correct.
which is, aren't we? Whatever that is.
I thought Kevin said that they're working
Don't
on
ask me.
splitting that.
The interpretation is that the application of ink that's common with microblading is the same as tattooing, so
we are
our zoning
not
ordinance
Able
does
to
not.
split them.
So they could do the other if they so wanted.
Specifically, the condition that Plan Commission added in this case was that there was only tattooing permitted as microblading.
But theoretically, if you had the conditional use, you could do either or.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 7 is city property. It's the site of the DeWitt Cottage and is home of the Atlantic Wildfowl and Heritage Museum. The museum is requesting a conditional use permit for an open-air market to allow a mobile vendor to operate on the south patio. Along with the conditional use permit, the museum is also modifying their existing lease with the city to allow this additional use on the property. Specifically, the museum plans to work with a vendor to sell food and drinks on the property using a flat-top grill and seating underneath of a single umbrella. As the proposed use is classified as an open-air market, a conditional use permit is requested. It is anticipated that 1 employee will operate the open-air market, which will be open primarily from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The request was reviewed by the PDRC, and no concerns were raised at the time.
One thing that had been requested was an actual mock-up of what the cart will look like. Is
Sure.
that in the, provide that?
That is in the staff report and has been provided, but we'd be glad to email more information if you request it. And yet again, we go to microblading. We are within an existing beauty salon within a unit, this is going to be a new beauty salon within a unit in the Holland Plaza Shopping Center. They're desiring to offer microblading and therefore need a conditional use permit. Salon will include up to 4 workstations and will employ up to 5 people. No changes are proposed to the exterior of the building other than the installation of signage. Typical hours will follow those of the shopping center. And item number 9 is a conditional use permit for an in-home daycare. The applicant is proposing to care for up to 12 children from her single-family house. From time to time, she will watch children overnight for parents that have duty or shift work. There is a large rear yard for the children to play outdoors, and the circular driveway located at the front is convenient for parents dropping off and picking up their children. And our final.
Are there additional conditions, maybe in the state permit or anything for having children stay overnight? I mean, are they required to have someone continuously awake to take care of these kids or anything?
I'm not familiar with those conditions, but we can certainly look into it and get that for you.
I mentioned that we would have overnight stay, and that would raise an additional.
I know we've had some in the past that have provided emergency care in those types of situations, but we can certainly get you the regulations and what those would be. We'd be glad to do that. And our last item for today, this item was deferred at the September 19th meeting. This is a request to develop the 4.5-acre site with a car wash and 10-pump gas station. Access to the site will be along Warwick Drive, 1 point. A condition is recommended that limits the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the site. Conditions have also been recommended to restrict the use of the proposed out parcel from allowing eating and drinking establishments with a drive-through and a convenience store. Many other potential uses would require city council action through the granting of a conditional use permit before they be permitted on this site as well. These uses include but are not limited to automobile repair garages, assembly uses, self-storage facilities, motor vehicle sales, and tattoo parlors. Microblading.
Go, Shannon, go.
Opposition was present at the Planning Commission public hearing, and letters of opposition have been received since that time regarding traffic, safety, and oversaturation of the market. Traffic engineering has reviewed this request and has stated that the improvements to the Warwick Drive, Holland Road intersection that are currently underway will be able to adequately address the increase in traffic from both this site and the Amstel Square development across Warwick Drive. The applicant is continuing to work with staff and the neighborhood and public safety officials to further protect the community with the addition of several more conditions, potentially.
And there's a meeting October 5th at 6 at the soccer complex with both sides in the community.
And good luck to you too, Shannon.
Gotta go down some common ground. There you go.
All right, great. Anything else, folks? Jimmy?
Go back to, item 2 is actually in the Beach District. Just want to make sure that we are equally fair to everyone. So I apologize, we was right on the edge there, so, Mr. Ern, it's yours.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Just to comment on the ITA plan, I really appreciate the fact that we've scheduled this public meeting for tomorrow evening so that the public can see the draft before the official council briefing on the 10th of October. But it's quite a opportunity area, and I hope that you all get a chance to look at that draft before we come in for the brief, and if possible tomorrow night would be great, but some good things in there.
Great. Any other things? Folks, thank you very much. We'll adjourn.